Welcome back to another Stockfish Teaches video. Today we are going over the 150 attack. So if you are a d4 knight c3 player, like playing the Jabava London or something similar, this will be right for you. Often when people go into like a King's Indian or a Pirc, this is usually the best response to the setup. Not usually, it is, according to Stockfish. This is also how Alex Bazia, how he plays when he's doing his own personal account against 2700 rated people. So if it's good enough for 2700 rated people, it's good enough for us. Anyhow, I guess let's get into the games. We have a few different variations. This is how the 150 attack starts. So, like, this is normal Jabava London start, but then they will start, like, move that pawn up to fianchetto their bishop. So, when you see that, you have to go into the 150, or you should. This is typical beginning of the setup. So these are the best moves or typical moves on both sides. As you see, white is already significantly up from the very beginning. It is a good setup right here, and there's a few different options that black can do. And that is, they could castle, play knight g4, c6, knight c6. These are the most common moves that you would see, at least between 1000 and 2000 elo. At the very beginning, we're just going to go over the castle variation. Right here on move 5, they castle. So then we would just follow suit right here on move 6. It's good to try and get the move order down, going through the castle variation, the different variations at the move, certain move order. It's just going to get you the best setup. I am not going to be able to do this perfectly, but I'm hoping I'll learn through my games, and I'd rather learn a lot of these moves when I'm under 1,000 or in my thousands, rather than try and figure all this out when I'm getting close to 2,000 rated. Hopefully I can get there. Then one of the variations is knight c6. And then you would just do the f3 move. Most of the variations that we'll go through, most of the time, you're going to want to push this pawn up to f3. And there's only a couple of times when you want to move the knight up to f3. And we'll go over those. But like almost every time, you'll want to push the pawn up to f3. So that is one of the variations. It's the castle knight to c6 variation. Now this is the castle knight to knight on b to d7 variation. And you just f3. c6 variation. Guess what you're going to do? f3. And then we also have the knight out. It's best to not do f3 here because you want to keep your bishop. If you do f3 here, he's going to take your bishop, and you're not going to have a great time. So you'll actually want to move the bishop over to f4 in this situation. That will get you through move 7 on that. So this is the castle variation. So move on to the next one, which is the knight to g4 variation. So you start off the same. And this is the very typical setup for the 150 attack. And this time, yeah, they're just going to move knight out right away just to try and be tricky. They want to get rid of that bishop. It's a very powerful bishop. It's very tricky. You just want to, in this case, move it all the way up here. You're kind of trying to provoke additional pawn moves, and you can move the bishop back. If they move the pawns, it's just going to create weaknesses, and it's not going to be great for them. And then also, if they try and do some funny stuff, they could end up hanging their queen if they're not careful. Bishop up there. If they do that, then you just pull it back if they try and do that pawn move. The next one is if they try and move that pawn up to attack the bishop, and you're just going to move it right back to the square. They can try and keep attacking you, but it's just going to create additional weaknesses, and it'll be good for you. So then there's the option where they castle here, and then you just attack the knight. Say, hey, you've stayed long enough in my home, now get out of here. So he'll move back, and right here you would then just castle. You pretty much just want like this whole setup. This is a pretty nice setup. Pretty strong, hard for him to do anything to you. And as you see, in this position, you're up equivalent of a full pawn. Like, is a great positional setup for you. So then you have where they have the knight out here, and then they bring in their other knight. You just want to push that pawn up and kick the knight back, and then again castle. Really, you can kind of think of it, before you really start attacking, you want to make sure your king is castled. And that's just kind of a general principle in chess. Just get your king castled before you start attacking. If you don't, your opponent could get you into some checks and devastate your whole position. This was the knight to g4 variations that I wanted to go over. And then next we will go over our next possible move. And that is c6. Right here they can be preparing a lot of different things that we'll just go over the 4 main variations. Like bring out c6, again f3. So there's very few situations where you don't actually play this f3. It's almost like kind of like a French type setup, a really weird off-place French. But most of the time you will want to just push that f3 pawn. And just be aware of what they're doing and counter their threats. So right here we just push that a3 pawn. Then they could just castle here, just castle, knight over there, a4. If they bring out the knight to bd7, knight on b to d7, just do a4. And then also, if they just start pushing that h5 pawn, or pawn to h5, you'll want to do a4 again. So you're just starting your attack over here, and also preventing the pawn from going back up here. And I'm not going to get into like what possibly can happen during the games, but this should get you a good starting point playing against the Pirc and some of the things that they could throw your way. The next variation, do the normal moves. And yeah, knight to c6. And then they castle, and then you castle. Pretty simple. A lot of the same type of moves that we've been doing in the other variations. Just setting up our position. And then they could also just try and strike the middle with e5. And you just lock it out and attack the knight. They could just play kind of a waiting move, a6, and then you could just bring up your h4 pawn, start your attack, or prepare for your attack. And then another thing they can do is just h6, and they don't dare castle with their h6 pawn right here. Otherwise, you can just take it and really mess up their position. So by doing that h6 move, it would prevent them from castling kingside. And then just castle here. I hope you see that there's kind of a common positional setup that's coming out from these different variations. And it's mostly this setup, but there's a couple of nuances. We'll work them through our games, and we'll just try our best. Don't get frustrated if you don't play it exactly right. I'm not going to play it exactly right either. It's just mostly to give us ideas of how to play it, and hopefully we can develop the accuracy where we play all of these 7 perfect moves according to what our opponent plays. So that'll do it for our introduction to the 150 attack. I will probably go over some of the lines, and in my own games, we'll figure out where I went wrong, what the best follow-up would be in the 150 attacks, and it's going to be a lot of trial and error, but we'll get it figured out. Anyhow, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for my future Stockfish Teaches videos, and we will talk to you later. See ya.